Okay,
Okay,
there we
so
go. We are now
hi
now
guys.
recording.
Um,
Okay.
welcome to our first official group meeting. Let's do our self-introductions and get that out of the way. So please say who you are, how you would like to be addressed in the group meeting, and why did you sign up for the class? I can go first. So my name is Mimosa, and you can either call me Mimosa or Mimo. And I signed up for this class because it's a required comms major class pathway. So that's why I'm here. And I'll be facilitating the discussion today with Charles.
And I'll go. So my name is Charles. That's about the only name I go by. I signed up for this class because again, it's a requirement for my organizational leadership program. But I'm also interested in learning how to become a better communicator because, with going into a huge organization like Starbucks and being about 30 minutes from their corporate, I'm kind of planning on using this to kind of move up within the company and become a better leader. I believe you have to be a better speaker, and that's one of the reasons why I'm very interested in taking this class. Then we can do. How about Sammy? How about you go next?
Okay, I'm Sammy, and I'd like to be called Sammy. I joined the class because I needed one more elective to my list. So this is an elective for me, but it's an upper division elective, obviously, and I really was interested in toning my leadership skills. I'm coming up for a advancement in my other job, not Starbucks, but the other one that I told you guys about.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to hone in on those skills.
Very cool. Where are you going to school for?
Family and human development.
Cool. Right on. How about we go to Ty? What about you?
Hi, I'm Ty. I am a junior at ASU in the Hugh Downs Communications School, hoping to take my communications degree directly into an MBA. And you guys can hear me, right? Because I don't know if I unmuted. And leadership has always been a quality in me that I don't know how to facilitate. So this has definitely been an eye-opening experience for me.
Awesome. And then Becky, the stage is yours.
Fine, thank you. So my name is Becky. Technically my real name is Rebecca, but I really don't like that at all. So I always tell people my name is Becky. I chose this class because it is part of my major, and my major is organizational leadership. And I also chose it because while I think I have some good leadership skills, communication is kind of like one of them that I kind of let slide a little bit. So I also hope to move up at Starbucks. So I think communication is a big role in doing that.
Awesome.
Right on.
Yeah.
So Becky, you're in OGL too, huh?
Yes.
Right on. Hopefully we'll see each other up in the corporate one day.
That would actually be amazing.
Yeah, right?
You guys got to take a picture together and then send it to the rest of us.
There you go.
Okay, so let's go through some ground rules for the discussion today. If anybody has any particular rules that they want to, have the group adhere to, I figure that, we'll just respect everybody's opinion. We'll try to listen actively, try not to interrupt. And I came across a phrase you would call it a while ago that I really enjoy for group discussions, which is to commit to learning, not debating.
I like that.
I love that.
So, yeah, does anybody else have anything they want to add to that at all?
No, just be you. That's all I ask.
I like that.
I like that too.
Okay, so I guess we'll move right on into our case study. Charles.
Okay, so let's just start off with question one. What do you know about Eleanor Roosevelt from prior courses and studies? How would you evaluate her as a leader? So I'll start off. So I don't really remember much about her growing up. I probably did some study on her probably in high school, but that's, for me, that was 20 years ago. So honestly, all I knew about her was that she was married to Franklin D. Roosevelt, the president of the United States. I knew that she was a very strong woman. and I knew that there was a little bit about her past that she was very well respected. But beyond that, I didn't really know much about her. When I dug into her, which we'll get into later on, I just found out that she was I tend to really respect her. I think she's really an amazing person. Coming back from a background that she had, the way that she was kind of treated by her husband, the fact that she became later was known as the first lady to the world is quite an accomplishment. That she had that much respect from people around the world. So I would think that she, the kind of leader I thought she was from our say was a servant leader. She was more worried about what other people thought of, not what people thought of her, but how others were treated, and she wanted to put others first before herself. And that even goes back to with her husband. Like she put him before her until later on in her career when, as you guys read, she started doing things with the UN and stuff like that. So I thought she was an amazing leader. So that was my take for question 1. Melissa, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I actually don't remember very much about her beyond her name from like prior courses and studies and stuff. It's like, I remember learning about the presidents in like 5th grade, but history, politics, social sciences was never really my strong point to begin with. And classes always focused on the presidents, not the first ladies to begin with when it came to like try to educate us about our government. But I think that it does say a lot that I know very few president names, and I know even fewer first lady names, but I know her name, Like, I feel like that says a lot about her influence and the impact that she's had on, like, all of us, the world, First Lady of the world. So would Ty like to go next?
Sure. The only things I actually knew about Eleanor Roosevelt were the women's rights activism that she had taken part in, and that's pretty much about it. Was minor things about how she was for the middle class, for the working class, for women's rights and equal rights and things like that. That's all I really ever heard or knew of her. I never even knew about her in elementary, junior high, any educational perspective.
Fair enough. Sammy, how about you go next?
Okay. So this is a hearsay fact. I can't recall who told me this. I'm pretty sure it was a woman in my family. It could have been my grandma. But one weird thing that I heard about Eleanor Roosevelt was that, yes, she was a woman's activist, so that was a major thing I knew. But somebody told me that she used to go to when they had concentration camps in America I'm sorry, I don't know if that's the right word, but housing for Asian women. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? Like when the war was going on and there was a whole bunch of, anybody?
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, they were, we can call them concentration camps. Yeah, there was one right across down the street from me, because that's what they used the Puyallup Fair for.
Aren't they called refugee camps?
Refugee camps.
Refugee camps. No, yeah. That's what they called them, but they weren't treated right.
You can't. I don't think concentration camps are the right way to go.
I didn't feel right saying that word, but I couldn't think of the right one. So I heard that she would go to to those places and teach the women how to do nails, and that's why a big group of Asian culture does nails in America. It could be completely bogus, but that's something I heard, and I actually didn't take the time to look that up, so I apologize. Other than that, I just knew that she was a first lady and an activist.
To follow up on that, I don't know if it was Eleanor Roosevelt, but I also have heard that a influential lady was the one that came out and taught Asian women how to do nails, because she was trying to teach them a skill that they could use to get work for themselves and to be able to make a living and make money for themselves. So I don't know if it's actually Eleanor, but I have heard that story before.
Okay, cool. Good.
Okay, Becky, your turn.
All right, so going off of what Mimosa said, like I'm the same way. I actually don't really know that much about politics at all, and the same with whole like not knowing presidents. Like history and politics and geography are probably my weakest points. But you are right. I did know who like Eleanor Roosevelt is. I've heard that name, and I don't know where I heard it, but I had heard like she was known like the first lady of the world. And through like kind of looking up it, I do remember learning the one thing about her is how she would stand in for her husband when he was paralyzed. She would start speaking on his behalf. And I actually forgot that about her. And obviously I knew that she was a women's rights activist and that she, in a sense, like she was more for the people and working for like her like civil rights, human rights, and stuff like that. But other than that, I really didn't know too much about her.
Mhm. Yeah, so like I guess like it's with general consensus that we can say that all of us didn't really remember who Eleanor Roosevelt was until this case study.
I think so like you said, like we all kind of knew the name though. Like we had a big impact.
Yeah, definitely. Like there was a quote in the textbook. I can't remember what chapter it was. I think it was like chapter 1. But it was something like in the section where they compare leaders versus managers, you know, and like the difference between the two. And I think the quote was something like leaders execute their agenda by motivating and inspiring. And like I think that really describes Eleanor Roosevelt after like all the research I've done on her for this case study, where it's like she's really gone out there and really inspired a lot of people, really helped motivate a lot of people, really helped empower a lot of people. And that's why we know her name, you know?
Yep.
Okay, so let's move on to our second discussion question, which is what leadership traits did Eleanor Roosevelt appear to lack, and what traits, if any, did she have? Now that I've done all this research on Eleanor, okay, I can say that I'm a pretty big fan of Eleanor Roosevelt. And so I guess the better question, now that I have this like rose-colored goggles on me about her, is what traits didn't she lack by the time that she was in a leadership position? Like, we learned that she grew up shy and timid and insecure and stuff, but then she really became this incredible person who did a lot of public speaking, who fought for a lot of rights, who led a lot of people in the end, you know, and she continued to lead them even after she like quote unquote like transitioned out of her leadership role as a first lady, you know. So I started trying to compare her with the traits listed under the traits approach of leadership, you know, where it's like, okay, like if you think that like leadership is all down to these traits, what are these traits, and did Eleanor exhibit any of them? And like I believe that she did, because you know she obviously exhibited cognitive abilities. Like my research came up where she was like, I think they said that she was 7 years old and she still hadn't learned how to read yet, right? And then a family member was like, what do you mean you don't know how to read at 7? And so then they began private tutoring for her from that age on until her mid-teens, where she actually entered an academy. And so like despite her late start in education, she ended up knowing how to write in like 4 languages.
Really? I didn't know.
Yeah,
That's
it was like
awesome.
a French, Italian, and I can't remember the other 2, and that's gonna bother me.
Spanish and German.
Yes, there we go. Thank you. But so
Sorry, even to add what you were saying, and one of my things that I looked up, she has actually 35 honorary degrees. So
yeah,
But she does not have a single actual college degree.
yeah.
Wow.
Well, I mean, like women's rights at that time was a little
Yeah.
not so great. So honorary degrees was probably the best that she could get at that time.
But I mean, I also look at it as like she was obviously that influential and like smart enough that she has such an impact that was something that was given to her.
Yeah,
too.
yeah. That all these colleges like were like, here, you are obviously smart enough.
Like you deserve these these mentions, which I thought was like, wow, like that's kind of incredible.
Yeah, so you know, she definitely exhibits like the cognitive abilities trait of leadership.
Okay.
She also what's it called? Exhibited a lot of internal locus of control. She also had like personality traits of being curious, which I'm sure helped drive her education to that point, you know, where it's kind of like there has to be something in her that wanted to learn these things for her to go out and pursue these subjects. And she was also motivated. And in the textbook, the motivated section was that they talked about power motivation and folk being motivated to like achieve their rights and other people's rights. And she definitely did that, where like her power motivation was so that she did it on the behalf of groups. You know, it wasn't like she was power hungry for herself, where it's like, I'm first lady, I'm gonna rule the world. You know, she was like, I'm first lady, I'm gonna do whatever I can in my position to better the life of all these people. And like, I'm just like, wow, Eleanor, big fan.
I did like that. Well, it was a little concerning when I initially started her history reading,
Mhm.
because it's pretty much states that she had no social economic exposure to anyone below her class
Mhm.
up until a certain point. So it made me, like, generally speaking, her level of empathy is so high in comparison to like that of just an average person, considering she wasn't ever around those sorts of people. She'd never really seen hardship in her life, except for her dad being an alcoholic, and that is a hardship. I mean, that's the reason that she got shipped off, is because her mom fell into a depression and her dad went into like a complete bout of aggressive drinking.
Yeah. She didn't exactly have the best beginnings.
Yeah. It makes me question it, because she was, when you're privately tutored, you generally speaking don't go into like a large social role where you have a lot of like exposure and things like that. Generally it comes out a little more towards stunted in social aspects, and yet she was able to persist to the point of being like this great woman.
And that's what I also thought was kind of like interesting about her. Like you said, like she had such like almost like a private, like out of like in hiding like background, and like she has such a high, it seems like, emotional intelligence. Like she was able to relate to so many people and help them. And I thought that was like something that, according to like the traits, like what was it, the social appraisal. So like I thought like that, like something just through this case study and through reading, like it's almost like she always had it.
Mm-hmm. She also did attend an academy, a school of some sort. So she moved from like private tutoring to like actual, I think it was like an all girls private academy.
Wasn't it in London?
I think so. I
think it was like in Europe.
Yeah, and like what I read about it was that the school's headmaster, is that what they call it?
The lady,
yeah, Marie, and then her last name that I'm not going to try to pronounce. It starts with an S, but I'm going to absolutely butcher it. But apparently, like, she grew really close with her headmaster, and her headmaster was the one that, like, you know, really pushed her to become more educated. And a lot of people like credit Eleanor's like fight for women's rights through Marie, where it's kind of like Marie was very progressive at that time, and then Eleanor picked that up from her and learned a lot of things from her, and I think they like remained friends for pretty much the rest of their lives. So like, yeah, like despite Eleanor's more isolated upbringing, she did hit a point where I think she was able to connect with other people that helped her learn how to connect with more people too, and I think that also definitely helps it out.
Yeah, I would say if there was one thing that, if we had to be devil's advocate for her, that she lacked in, was, I guess, would be at the very beginning of her career, as you guys have all mentioned or hit upon, is that I think she may have had a lack of confidence for a while.
That's what I put too, Charles.
Yep. I think beginning with her meager beginnings, you know, in her lower social class, she didn't have confidence. And it kind of portrayed that, you know, when it came out that Franklin Roosevelt had cheated on her. You know, I don't know very many women in today's, you know, modern society that would have put up with what he had, you know, kind of put her through. You know, he kind of besmirched their name. He kind of ran, and his way of apologizing was kind of like, oh, sorry. And she was just like, oh, okay, I'm going to stay around and, you know, keep raising you up to become who you are. If there was just that one piece of characteristic she lacked was that. I mean, granted, over time she grew and became more bolder and stronger and became the woman that we've all admired and who she is, you know, in the history books. But I think that was that one thing, and she was probably at the time a first lady that history books at first probably would say she wouldn't be a first lady because of her meager beginnings. She didn't have the high social class. She wasn't that type of a person. She couldn't relate to the high society. So that probably hurt her confidence a little bit at first, until, you know, Franklin had her go be the eyes and ears for him when he was asking her to be kind of like his spy, I guess is the way to put it. So that's kind of where I came from when if I had to play devil's advocate to kind of find one thing that maybe was wrong with her. So was her confidence at the beginning of her life.
Mhm.
So I put the same thing, and to answer question number 2, just reading through the case study, it was saying, you know, she lacked confidence at first. She had trouble speaking in public, but then it goes on to list like as 5 times as many accomplishments that she had. And I think being in the situation to become a leader really helped her hone in on those skills, such as her, obviously, like you guys said before, she was she knew how to write really well, so that was one of the things, and the emphasize with needs of others and perseverance. So those were a couple of the traits I felt she had as a leader.
And I think that's like what we all probably had. Like, I didn't have trouble answering the question per se, but in the beginning, like, I'm like, well, technically she almost had none of these like traits that were going by. In the beginning, she was so shy and stuff. So the one trait I said, like, for sure was her personality. Like, she didn't really have the personality of a leader. She was shy, she was timid, she couldn't speak, she didn't even necessarily, like, I guess, like that look of a leader. Like, she just kind of was like there. And that's when you guys said, like, over time, like, she became this great leader. So I was kind of like, well, I mean, technically she has a personality because she was able to do it, but at first, like we were all saying, like, she almost, I would say, almost had none of these like official like traits of a leader.
Mhm. Yeah, like I don't think anybody would have like looked at her as a child and been like, she's definitely going to become first lady of the world in like 20 years. You know, I think a lot of people probably looked at her and was just like, she's probably going to become a very like quiet like housewife type.
Isn't that the thing that they said? Like, it was either in my research or directly from the book that basically said their description was a homely young girl. I was like, okay, so appearance is usually something that you look for in a leader. Like, they have to have a presence. And
Yeah, she described herself as looking like an old lady or something like that in the book.
When she was young, like as like a child, apparently she was like very serious and like so serious to the point that she earned the nickname Granny.
Yeah.
So like people literally call this like little girl Granny.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's I guess a testament to how serious she was as a child, you know. Did anybody else have anything?
Let's move on to I guess we kind of answered number 3, but let's move on to number 3, you know, just kind of get it in a formal setup. Number 3, does Mrs. Roosevelt demonstrate the leaders are made rather than born? Why or why not? I would say in this case, obviously she was not born because she didn't display the characteristics at first. 100% in this study, and if we have to go with just by her alone, I would say she was not born, but she was made. She was made into a leader. I think that the circumstances that she was put into, either by Franklin or by, you know, her background, made her stronger and stronger and stronger until a point that she had just become somebody that couldn't be reckoned with anymore. Like, she was just, you know, she got tired of being in the shadows. She got tired of being the yes sir, yes ma'am type person, you know, just the fall over later, until she eventually, you know, didn't let people tell her what to do. You know, there was something I was reading about her where she went to I can't remember what it was, but showing that she was made is that she went to go sit with the African American Society, and there was somebody of her class and culture that said, you can't sit with them. So she picked up her chair and went and sat in the middle of the aisle, and to bridge the aisle between the African Americans and the white and the Caucasian delegates. And that right there showed me right there that, you know, in her earlier years, I don't think she would have done that. I think she would have just been like, yeah, you're right. I'll just sit right here. Because of what she started growing to become, and how the respect that we started to get, and the confidence that she started building. She was just like, basically, you know, told them, screw off, I'm going to do what I want. And these people are just as equal to you as they are to me. So I believe in this scenario, Eleanor Roosevelt was a made leader.
And just to go with what you said, I do actually also agree. And I was looking at the textbook that said, because obviously when she first started, she was a poor speaker. She was actually made fun of all the time for it. And I guess the textbook even says, in the case study, she overcame her fears and changed her speaking voice, and she eliminated her nervous giggle, and she learned to make eye contact. And she did this all through practice and preparation. So it kind of shows you right there that she was more so made, and she acknowledged her weaknesses and decided, okay, like, this is what I have to do to become a leader, instead of just like, she wasn't born with it, as we all said. With that.
Later on in my research, when I was looking at later in her life, she apparently had she had her own radio show, she had her own newspaper articles, she was a journalist. She also had been a public speaker that sold off more than 700 paid speeches on different, like, she was charging, I think it was $1,000 per speech, but sometimes the crowds amounted to upward of like 15,000 people listening. And they were all about like her role in her husband's presidency, equal rights, things like that. And it was just like seeing from where she came from to her actual like coming to full fruition of who she was as a leader. I was like so amazed, because she really did have like an active role in so many different like pots of like underdeveloped communities. She even reached out and was working with World War I veterans, trying to build up where they were living to kind of make their lives better, considering they just fought for our country. And
yeah, she was amazing. Like, I also looked up a lot of like her written work, right? Because like it reminded me of like, I think again chapter 1, where we read about communication or leadership in a communication perspective. And like one of the components that was mentioned was storytelling, you know? And like, I think Eleanor did that really well. Like she had a newspaper column that she wrote 6 days a week for, that a lot of people equate as being almost like a personal diary, because that column was all about her experiences, the incidences happening in her life, and just like her reflection on it and what she's learning from it, right? So she's already like crafting her identity to the public eye. But then she also wrote like a monthly advice column for a magazine where people could communicate their thoughts and opinions to her. So now through 2 different like print sources, she's talking to other people and people are talking back, you know? And like that, I get like, I'm sure that really allowed her to like really get into the core of like a lot of people's lives and their struggles, and like probably helped her, you know, aim for certain rights, where she's like, she sees so many people struggling with their rights, and so she's like, okay, now I'm gonna go do something about it. And then I don't know if you guys like looked up her bibliography, but she wrote a lot of books, She even co-authored a lot too. It was a very long list, so you can definitely say that she's an accomplished author, and that she really used storytelling in her leadership position to really, you know, I guess drive the masses, inspire people.
wasn't she the most produced author that had ever been in quote unquote a position within the White House? Because I think the only other 2 in that time frame had only done like 1 or 2 books, and she had produced like 8 while her husband was in office.
I wouldn't doubt it after looking at her long list of publications.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you guys. I don't think that she I don't know if her life would have taken her into being a leader had she not been Roosevelt's wife, to be honest. But I think that she really stepped up to the plate when she was provided the opportunity to do so.
I totally agree with that statement. I don't think she would have been anything. And I hate to say that, but I don't know if she would have, got the exposure if she wasn't a president's wife. She might have just been that stay-at-home mom that, during that time was the acceptable society, acceptableness of a woman in society, which, yeah, I think that's where her life would have taken her. I'm glad it didn't, though, because we all now have this admiration for her.
Did she have 5 or 6 kids?
I think it said 6.
And I think they lost one of them, and they named 2 of them the same name.
I didn't catch that.
Yeah, I also read that she was ill-suited for motherhood and that caring for children and enjoying them did not come naturally to her. I thought that was also very interesting.
That is interesting.
That is very interesting.
Yeah, I was like, oh, like, okay, you didn't even really seem to enjoy your children? That's kind of how I read it. Like, I'm not saying she didn't, but like the way I read it, I was like it didn't come naturally to her, and I was like, that was just to me like something like really interesting for somebody who has such compassion for people. Like that was just, I looked at it like, wow, like you relate with other people, but yet you didn't seem to enjoy your own children.
Honestly,
the article worded it, I'm not sure, but the way it made it sound like she did not like her own kids.
well, it could also stem, and this is totally, both my parents are therapists, so this could be me just overanalyzing it, but maybe her childhood sucked so bad that she just like related children to crappy times or something, and just since she didn't enjoy her childhood, I don't know, she wasn't interested in her own children's or something. I don't know.
I
Yeah,
read that her mother-in-law was, as nicely put, very controlling.
They
And-
lived in houses next to each other and built a door to connect their houses.
Yeah.
Oh, hell no.
And her mother-in-law would literally rule like her own household and then her son's household. And so the children were mostly raised by her mother-in-law.
Oh.
And her mother-in-law really seemed to like her,
No.
right?
Sarah Roosevelt was her name.
So I wonder if that like really knocked down her confidence as a mother, where it's like there's literally a woman controlling my household, taking care of my children, nurturing my children, teaching my children, and then telling me that I can't do it right. Like, I'm sure that had to like affect her mentally and emotionally in a way, so like it's hard to say, like I can't, like maybe she did just like naturally believe that she wasn't cut out to be a mother, but she became a mother to 6 children because that was expected of her, right? Or was it something that like, like with all this compassion that she had for other people and being able to relate and understand other people, I felt like she would also be able to do that with her kids had her mother-in-law not been like over her shoulder the entire time.
Yeah.
And then like with that being said, going back to the question, I also do believe that she was definitely made, not born, especially like if we look at everything that happened in her childhood. And like before this class, right, I always thought that there were like 2 approaches to leadership. There was like the group of people that are like, no, people are born with it. And then there are a group of people who are like, no, like you can become a leader, right? And I had always been in the wheelhouse of like, yeah, you can become a leader, that it's a skill that you can learn and that you can improve upon it and basically figure out how to do it. Like you don't have to like rely on anything super innate, right? And just like with college and whatnot, like I feel like that's really propelled that train of thought for me. So like when I saw this question, I was like, I already had, like an answer to it. I was like, oh no, made, not born, right? Now bear with me, okay? It's gonna sound like a tangent, but it's not. I was super curious about whether or not she like could have been born with it, that she could have been born with traits of leadership, right? And there's also the hot debate on this thing called zodiac signs, horoscopes, right? Some people believe it, some people don't. But basically, it's people being categorized by their birthday dictating what their personality will be like. Okay? So like depending on when you're born will kind of decide like a lot of like your innate traits, right? So on a 0.5 second whim, I looked up Eleanor's birthday. I was like, okay, Eleanor, what horoscope sign are you? And did it say that you would be a good leader? And, okay. So no scientific background to this. So, like, take this information with a grain of salt, okay? But I found out that she's a Libra. Okay, so.
I was gonna say she's like a Leo or a Taurus.
She's a Libra, okay? And Libras are defined by their seriousness and their thoughtfulness, which I feel like really talks about her in her entire life, because as a child she was very serious, aka Granny, but then in her later years in leadership you really see her thoughtfulness come out in her empathy with people, right? And then Libras are also known to be self-disciplined. And so like that's just fun facts. But what really got me, what really like made me pause, where I'm like, oh damn, okay, is that out of the zodiac signs, they can be categorized by their element and then by their position within the cycle. Okay, so like they like have a cycle, have an order where the signs appear. And for her, her sign's a cardinal sign, which means that she starts her section, her element. And cardinal signs are known to be leaders. So
Okay.
like I read that and I was like, oh wow, Eleanor, like were you always just a leader then? And just like your circumstances did not give you the opportunity to, you know? Like I'm still very much in the wheelhouse of leaders can be made, but that little tidbit fun fact about Eleanor really got to me.
So it's almost like what I kind of hear you saying is, in a way, we all have leadership within us. And would you agree with that?
I do. I think all of us have like the capability to like, if you want to learn it, then you can. You know?
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I think you said the key word, like, if you want to learn it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that's, like, the most important part. That's why we're all agreeing, like, we said, like, they are made. Like, she might have been born, which I still think what you're saying is, like, super interesting, because, like, that is just kind of funny how, like, she was technically, like, born, according to her sign, to be a leader, and, like, she became one. But at the same time, like, we're saying, like, she learned how to do it. Because there's no way, based off her background, like, that girl was too quiet. Like,
especially in the time that she was a woman.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think of this to add that, like at the time, the era, and the fact that she's a woman. So yeah, like that is actually all really interesting.
Yeah, she just like had a lot of things going against her, which I think only makes it that much more amazing that she became such a inspiring and motivating leader. You know, it's like she literally was still fighting for women's rights at that time, and yet somehow she managed to rise above all of that. Yeah, and then I can't remember who said it, but somebody mentioned it where I think it was Sammy, where like if her husband had not become president, she like probably never would have like found herself in this leadership role. Can you guys hear that?
Yeah, is that out your window?
Is that Becky's drone?
Let me come.
No, he's actually not outside. The drone guy is not outside. I did close my window just in case he was, because he was really close to my building.
Okay, terribly sorry. Somebody decided to mow their lawn today.
Oh, darn.
It's probably really nice where you are, so.
What was I saying? So yeah, where like if her husband hadn't become president, she probably never would have like taken up any sort of leadership roles and stuff like that. And I have some research on that too, where it's that she never told her husband this like prior to his presidency, but she actually didn't really want him to go into politics. She didn't want him to go and try to become president, right? So like, but you know, she being housewife was not going to tell him that. She instead just supported him in his journey. And then when he became president and she became first lady, she just, you know, grew to accept that this is her position and she's going to make the best of it.
Hmm.
So yeah. Does anybody else have anything else to say about that?
Mm-mm. No, I think you hit it right on the nail there.
Okay, so we'll move on to our next discussion question, which is, can you think of other leaders who succeeded even though they lacked important characteristics that we associate with effective leadership? What accounts for their success? Ty looks super excited.
Hi, would you like to go?
Yours.
I think we've all watched it now. So, Tiger
Don't
King.
say it. I know what you're gonna say. Don't say it.
Oh, root for me. I'm only on episode 4.
So, well, you know who Joe Exotic is, so you clearly know that it does not take
Believe he's coming in north.
it does not take brains to be a leader.
Oh my gosh. Something that would have never been talked about it last year. Oh my gosh.
No.
This is amazing.
It's really bad because when I read this question, the only people that came to mind were just extremely bad people like Hitler.
Yeah, I thought of Hitler too, and Joe Exotic, like kind of in the same pool. Actually,
Hitler and Exotic are all in the same category. Oh my gosh.
like in this question, like I was like, wow, like I guess I have to compare the two now, and I wasn't really trying to do that, so I'm glad to know that I was not the only one who thought.
Oh.
Yeah, I too, when I first read this question, like the first name that popped into my head was Hitler, and I was like, oh no. You know, I was like, I don't quite know if I should bring this into our very first group meeting, you know, like I don't know about that. But if anything, I feel like out of all the discussion questions, I struggled the most with this one.
Mhm.
Same.
Which, of course, that's the one we had to answer, like the main one.
Yeah.
A little thought-provoking there.
Yeah, I struggled with this one a lot, and I think what it came down to for me, at least, was how would you define success? You know, because if you define success of a leader simply being that there's an individual who is leading a group of followers and these followers are willingly following this leader, and you count that as a success of being a leader because you do have a following that believes in your abilities and beliefs and whatnot, then, you know, despite Hitler being a bad leader, he still had success as a leader.
Yeah.
Right? Which, you know, with a lot of hesitancy, I bring up the name of Trump, you know, where,
Oh yeah.
you know, like I wouldn't be able to say that he's a great leader like Eleanor Roosevelt, you know, but you can't deny the fact that he really succeeded in what he does in being a businessman and owning these corporations and then magically becoming the president of the United States. And so, like, I guess, like, you know, at that point, it's like, how do you define success? How do you define being effective in leadership? Because obviously they did something right to get people to believe in them, you know? But so that was my biggest struggle regarding that. I did try looking up other people who were told that they didn't have certain characteristics that we associate with leadership. Like, you know, how like Eleanor was like told that she's very mild, meek, right? But then she still became Eleanor Roosevelt, right? And what I found was the original company of Foot Locker, right? Before they were Foot Locker, they were like a 10 to 5 cent discount store for like goods and stuff like that. And they were started by a man named Frank Winfield Woolworth. And like he had like stores all over the place called Woolworth. And when he was younger and he first worked at a goods store, which is how he got inspired to open up his own, he was actually told to not interact with customers Like, they made him clean the windows and like sweep the floors and stuff, but they were like, yeah, no, like customer service is not your thing. You're not good enough to interact with people. Right? But yet somehow he still became a man that was able to start up a company and lead people to expand this company across the United States. So he has something in him, but not quite sure what.
But to even like go off what you're saying, obviously this is like on a much smaller scale. I actually had a store manager who was terrible with people. I mean, like I can tell you, like I've seen my coworkers walk off the floor in tears, but yet he was always regarded so highly by upper management and by like we were to the point of like people came to our store to observe us to see how well we performed because he got results. Like I'm not joking you, I would stand on the main barring with 10 different store managers and district managers watching me what I'm doing, and it was awful because like they weren't watching to be like, oh wow, good job Becky. They were watching to be like, well, Becky didn't do this. So like he was able to get results and nobody liked him. Like I personally didn't have an issue with him because he kind of left me alone because I could meet his standards and go fast enough, but like that was his thing. If you weren't good enough, like you weren't, like he would give you a hard time. And like I mean, like I said, people would leave on the floor crying, but yet he was actually quickly promoted within like a year of working with him because he got results. So like if that's what you're looking for as an effective leader, like he had none of the traits. He wasn't kind, he wasn't compassionate, he didn't relate to others, he didn't know how to like, it's almost like he didn't even know how to tell you what to do or give direction. He would just tell you, go faster, this isn't good enough. And he wouldn't give you like, hey, like, you know, like, Becky, why don't you do this, this, and this?
Right.
And that way you can meet this, this, and this.
Like
And
feedback, constructive criticism.
yeah,
Isn't
like
that,
he was just demanding, and because of it, like he was considered successful. Like he was a good leader in their eyes, and he got results. So to me, it's like your question is there, like what does he have that he's considered good? Like where do you draw that line? Because he was a leader, he was like people liked him, but yet he was very mean and demanding to the people that worked below him.
isn't that what a wow, I just faced on the word authoritarian. Yes.
Yeah.
Authoritarian leadership.
Because they said, yeah, I remember reading it was talking about how they get like the best results in a way, but people don't like them. And
And
then
they
people
have
don't want to
the
stay around for long.
And they actually
highest
they
walkout
did it.
rate.
I think in previous classes I actually used to write about him a lot, and I told him I'm like Mike, I actually use you as an example of an authoritative leader, and he took that as like a compliment. I'm like, and I know how to tell him like it's really not, because I thought me saying that would kind of like be like, oh, like why do you guys see me that way? Instead he was like, oh good. I'm like, no, like yeah, you should give authority because like especially newer people, like they need it because they don't know what to do, but like you can't be that way with someone who's experienced and you just want to like motivate them a bit. But I just thought that was like you said, like interesting based off that like you didn't want him dealing with people. In fact, he never dealt with customers because it was horrendous. So like he would just have a shift supervisor go out there, because I think I remember seeing him yelling and screaming, his face turning like bright red. I'm like, Mike, you need to go to the back. Like I got this. But he's still considered a good leader. So I thought that was pretty interesting too.
I feel like all those examples that you three just gave really matched up with what the question was asking, because it's saying, even though they succeeded, what are the characteristics of an effective leader that they lack, which is basically, I hear, like being a good person in a way, like Trump, Hitler, Mike, whatever, you know, yeah, exotic, yeah. So,
Exotic.
so
Oh, there we go.
I will, if you guys don't mind, change the subject a little bit as to who I chose. Are you good with that?
No, go for
Yeah,
it.
go ahead.
Okay. So Sacagawea came to my mind because she was kind of thrown into her whole life, basically. In the role that she played in the Lewis and Clark expedition, she had to lead. You wouldn't think of her as a leader because she was 16 when she was helping them at that time, and she was pregnant afterwards had the baby while she was still helping them on this expedition. So those are things that I don't think we necessarily associate with a leader. Being young, being a mom. And then where else would I wanted to go with that? I think what accounted for her success was that she had perseverance, just like Eleanor had. And she was able to get out of her comfort zone. And even though, so at one point when they were on the expedition, she actually came into contact with her brother, who she hadn't seen since she was 12 and forced to marry out of her tribe. And so she came in contact with her brother, and her brother was able to give them horses on this expedition or whatever. And she chose to stay with the expedition instead of her brother, who, you know, her family, who I'm sure she missed so much. So I think she showed like giving things up for the betterment of others, for the whole society, is another way I would account for her success.
Okay. Well, I will go back to what you guys were talking about with authoritarian. I found the first person I thought of when we were talking about a great leader but lacked characteristics was General George S. Patton. The man lacked empathy. He didn't care about who you were, where you came from, what you felt, what you thought, as long as the results got done. He ruled the World War II, the Pacific Fleet with an iron fist. He made rules and regulations that the soldiers didn't like. He didn't care if you liked them, but you will listen to him. He actually made the soldiers wear helmets on a daily basis. Whether you were sleeping, walking, talking, you wore your helmet. It didn't matter. And the soldiers did not like that, but he's General S. Patton, and everybody respected him because of the results that he'd already been getting in the World War II. And he just kept, and they did it anyways. He ruled with fear. If you didn't listen to him, he'd demote you. He didn't care. Like, he was there to win a war, and he didn't care about your feelings. Yet he went down in history as one of the most successful, respected generals in the entire history of our United States military. The guy, you know, they made movies about him. They've made, you know, documentaries about him. And if you just listen and read anything about him, he was a hard-headed man. But he was successful. He helped win the war, the World War II, you know, and the things that he did may not have been liked by many people, but they showed results. Men didn't lose their lives because they wore their helmets on all the time. Keeping their socks dry was another one. That's one of those things that kind of translated over to Vietnam, but that was one of his things, you know, keep your socks dry. Like, because you can get diseases. Men were like, I don't want to change my socks. Just do it. And if he didn't do it, well, you had to deal with George S. Patton, you know. So it's one of those things that, you know, again, like going back to what you guys were saying about leaders who are just mean. I mean, just break it down to, that's the best word. He was just a mean guy, but respected because he got the job done. So I went with George S. Patton on that one.
Yeah, I think that's interesting where like a lot of like when we talk about leadership, we seem to always bring it back to empathy, like Sammy has said, you know, where it's like we seem to view the more effective leaders in a better light when they do have empathy. But then it's interesting to see these leaders who lack empathy, but then still have all this, affluence?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where it's like, wow, like somehow they managed to skip over the empathy factor and still get to where they are.
Yep.
I think it goes based off what Charles was saying too. They're able to do that because they're leading out of fear. Like you fear them, so you listen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's how they can get over the empathy part, because now they scared a whole population of people, and now they're like, okay, like we better do what he says or she says, because if we don't, then that's it for us.
Mm-hmm.
But also, like we said, and those people kind of also are like, they're quick to leave.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Okay.
I did think
Go ahead,
about
Mike.
one. I did think about one when we were talking about Trump, because of course, Trump, who came before Trump? The best president we've ever had. Just kidding. Obama was basically like the dark horse. Wow, that did not come out right. He was like we've never had
Actually-
an African American president or a Black president, whatever you want to call them. I don't know the proper social term, but like he was so looked down upon by a lot of society, and yet he had the largest group of people like come out who have never voted before,
Mhm.
all because he's that person. Like you've seen him go through the line of shaking hand, shaking hand, shaking hand, all of a sudden grabs hand, hug. Like he knew how to lead. He knew how to get a group of people behind him and actually have like a good, strong standing.
Mhm.
And like you're saying, like what we're all saying, like he demonstrated empathy. He demonstrated that he understood people,
Yeah.
or he was able to find a way to relate to them. And I think like that's what we're saying, like those are the characteristics we're looking for, and how he used that to his advantage to get such a large number of people to go out and vote.
Mhm.
And like we're saying, like still talk about to this day. I mean, like I'm pretty sure he's probably somewhere in our textbook too.
When was the
I
textbook
didn't
written?
Last year, yeah.
And most of my newer textbooks, like he has been mentioned in some light, and it's generally for his leadership skills, or how he could relate, or how he did something. And I don't think I saw anything in a negative light in his leadership skills yet, but most of it has been portrayed in why it was a good thing the way he led.
Mhm.
That makes sense. I can't remember anything specific because they were like in previous classes, but I do find that interesting how his more I'm just like you approach helped shape him as such a positive leader. If that makes sense.
Definitely.
What is that in the textbook? I think it's like LMX leadership or something.
Yes.
Leadership member exchange. It's like building a common rapport with the people that you're trying to lead.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yes.
I also like because I have the textbook on a Kindle, right? I just searched the entire textbook for his name. He comes up 3 times.
Yeah.
3 times. So it's there.
I have the old school book.
That same.
Okay, guys. Last but not least, question number 5. What principles do you see in the life of Eleanor Roosevelt that can help you become a better leader? All right. Well, I mean, I'll just start off again with this. Number 5. I think honestly for me, it would be the servant type of leader. Like I've had really bad mentors in my life about how to be a leader and how to be, a good person, not a good person, but a leader. I've only dealt with either a authoritarian type of leadership or passive aggressive type of leaders. I've never really seen a leader up until recently be a person that has no problem going out and helping his coworkers or his subordinates, if you want to use that terminology. I think she's the perfect example of that. It's just showing that it doesn't matter your class. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter your race, your religion. It doesn't matter what you believe. Put the people first. They're the ones doing the work for you. They're the ones out there, as blue collars. I feel like a lot of the guys that I've worked with in the past, the white collars that stay in the office and just demand things from you and don't actually want to get their hands dirty. I think it doesn't necessarily have to be them coming out and getting their hands dirty with you, but having the empathy to understand that your job requires a lot. And I think that's one of the things I want to reflect upon myself with her as becoming a better leader. It's just being a better servant. I want to serve my constituents and my subordinates, and have them have the comfortability around me to come to me with questions, to come to me with problems, anything, and knowing that once they walk into my door or walk in my presence, walk into where I'm at, wherever I am on the floor, in my office, whatever, that they know I'll do my best to help them, and put them first before I put myself first. And as growing up as an only child, I had I had to learn that the hard way, because I don't really have anybody. I mean, later in my life, I became the oldest out of 8 children, but for the first majority of my life, I was an only child, and putting people first was very hard. It was very hard to learn, and I'm still learning it. And I think that's one of the traits I want to learn from Eleanor is how to be a better servant to others. Yeah.
So I think going off that, pretty much based on what you're saying is like I do agree. Like I think just her as a whole and putting people first is something I always admired about her. But like to get like even like more specific, I just really like her level of empathy and I guess relatableness with people, because I always kind of thought I think I'm relatively good at forming relationships, but the one thing that like I always struggled with was like finding a way to relate to people, because obviously like I haven't been through the same things that you have been through, so it's like, well, I can't relate to that. And like I think that the way she's able to, because I'm sure like again like with her civil rights, she has not been through the same things as other people. Like there's no way she couldn't have. She's like the first lady, so that the fact that she was able to find a way to connect with other people, like that does speak volumes to me. And I also like that she's like what we said, like she's very perseverant. And like I'm kind of someone where when it comes to when I make a mistake, I'm kind of like, oh well, maybe this isn't for me. And I kind of like that's something I have to actually work on, because I'm like, oh no, but can't do it, and I like just shy away from it or avoid it. And one of them is honestly like public speaking. I can't stand it. Like it could be in a room full of peers that I know at my job, and I'm like, no. So the fact is that she's able to like acknowledge that and work on it and like not give up on it, even though people laugh at her. Like that's something to me like I really admire as a leader.
I'm with you on that one, Becky. I can't do public speaking at all. I hate it. I can be in a group of like 20, 30 people that I may be really close with, but getting up in front of them and yeah, no. Gets my heart going.
Like
Still nervous and flushed in the face.
I'm a little bit better if we're sitting in like a group, like a round table type of thing, or like, but my manager actually put me on the spot one time, and it's the same one he's like, oh yeah, he's like, Becky, you got this, you're a leader. And I'm like, what? Like, you want me to stand up in front of my whole entire store? And like, we have like 30 people working at our store. Like, we're a crazy busy store. And I'm like, okay. And I didn't even know some of them because I only work, like I'm an opener at my store and I rarely work past 3 o'clock. And I'm like, who are like 10 of these people? So like to me, that was like, oh God, here we go. Like these people, the people I don't know are really judging me. And like looking at her, like she just got up and did it anyway. And I thought that was like really admirable.
Yeah, I definitely like really admire how like hardworking she is. You know, it's like I'm over here struggling to learn a second language, and she's over there learning 4. And I'm like,
I hear you.
I'm like, Mimosa, what are you doing with your life? You know, like she just seemed really I don't know, driven, disciplined, self-motivated.
Yeah.
All the things that I want to be, but you know, still kind of struggling to get there. Right? And like I guess like when it comes to talking about the principles of Eleanor Roosevelt, like the best that I could do is to borrow her words. Like, I don't know if you guys realize, but there's a lot of quotes out there by her that are often integrated in our lives that we didn't realize were by her. Okay, and that probably attributes to the fact that she has so many different publications, right? But I found a great leadership quote from her where she says that a good leader inspires people to have confidence in the leader. A great leader inspires people to have confidence in themselves. You know, and I think that she managed to find the confidence in herself, and then she spent the rest of her lives trying to help other people find confidence in themselves. And like that's just incredible. You know, it's incredibly empowering, motivating.
I completely agree. And I think that's what I got from her the most as well, is that after she took the time to work on some of the weaknesses that she faced, such as public speaking and confidence, it's not like she just was like, okay, well, I'm not good at those things, so I'm going to focus on these things. She took the time to get better at those things. And I think for me, that's what I will take away from her is sometimes when I'm not good at something, I try to just get it out of my head instead of trying to make it better. So as a leader, I definitely want to be able to do that. make my weakness stronger, I guess.
You know, she has quotes about that too.
Lay it on me.
Okay, well, one of them, I have like a whole list because I got so excited finding quotes from her. One of them is, do one thing every day that scares you.
Ooh,
So,
I've heard that one
writing
before.
down.
Yes, exactly,
Yep.
which is exactly what I mean, where it's like I swear everybody has heard at least one quote from her before. We just didn't realize it was from her, you know? But like, I think that quote really like talks a lot about her character, you know, where it's like she wasn't fearless, you know, like she didn't like public speaking, she didn't like a lot of things, she, you know, probably had a lot of fears and doubts herself, but she tackled it brilliantly, you know. And another quote from her is, you can often change your circumstances by changing your attitude, you know. And like that, I feel like that's right too, you know, like you could view things one way and let yourself just kind of like submit to that way, or you could try to view it in a different way and see what else you can do with it.
Yeah. We love Eleanor.
We
Yeah.
do love Eleanor. Oh wait, do I have to put my input in on this one?
Yes, Ty. It's I can hit you with another quote if you want, though.
So it's funny because when I was reading her, like, they have a whole First Lady thing, like the firstlady.org is literally a complete, like, every First Lady has their own thing that they've done. And hers said, one of the like minor details in it is that she invited one of her close friends who was in some form of government or something, and she took them down to like basically where minority housing, where it was like just basically inhospitable living, like think third world country type of living. And she was like, this is what these people are dealing with. This is what they have to do on a daily basis, and yet you're living in this amazing place and you have all these things, but they weren't given the same cards, but they deserve the same equality. And I admire anyone who's willing to fight for equality. And to me, her empathy and her just social savvy and her skills with building things, and the fact that she stood behind her husband no matter what, and the fact that she, during her husband's passing, she stopped writing for a total of 4 days before she published another article. Like,
Wasn't
she only
that, like,
took
her only break too?
Yeah, her
like,
only
we had never
4-day
stopped
break.
writing before until those 4 days.
Yeah.
I also wanted to say one thing that I learned that I wanted as I was thinking more about this, is that I wanted to express her courage. You know, like I mentioned earlier in this meeting about how she took a chair and put it in the middle of the aisle to bridge the gaps between, you know, the different types of the different races within the meeting that she was in. I still to this day don't know very many people that can do that. You know, as a leader, I don't know if I would, if someone was like, well, you can't do that because of blank, you know. That is something that when I read that, was like, holy cow. Like, during that time, for her to just do that, not only was she a woman, she was standing up for a race that nobody believed was equal at the time. And the fact that she basically, you know, like I said earlier, like she just basically stuck her nose up to those people and did it anyways. I wonder how many of us could do that today. You know, even in this, you know, more of accepting time and stuff like that. It's for me to have that kind of courage is something I want to also like take from her, is that she just didn't care what people thought after a while. She just was like, you know what? No, everybody's equal in my eyes, and I'm going to stand up and I'm going to do this anyways. So her courage is another one I wanted to throw out there as I was thinking about that.
And this is, I don't know why this made me think of it, but one of the other facts I found was she considered herself like the ugly duckling. And I'm like, looking back on, like, the ugly duckling obviously goes up to be like a beautiful swan. So like, I was like thinking, like looking back on it, like, you know, she got through this horrible stuff, like, you know, she was the ugly duckling, but then she did like come out of this and she became somebody who had such an impact on the world. And it was like through her courage and through not caring and through in a sense, doing just what's right.
Right.
Definitely. I also have a quote about her and her thoughts on courage. So Charles, this one's for you, okay? You gain strength, courage, and confidence by every experience in which you really stop to look fear in the face. You are able to say to yourself, I lived through this horror. I can take the next thing that comes along. You must do the thing you think you cannot do.
Okay, that's deep. I like
That's
that.
deep.
Right? Like, look up her quotes. It's incredible. I have a whole list now, and I'm just like, great, now to like plaster this all over my life until I get motivated enough to like have a shred
Wow.
of who she is and how she is.
For real. Yeah, she's amazing.
Yeah, so I think general consensus is this group likes Eleanor.
Yeah, for Eleanor, all the way.
Okay, guys. Well, I think that concludes the 5 questions. To get this, to continue with this meeting, we need to figure out what we are going to do for next week. What time works for us, and all that. So, since we're all here and well, we're in a group text, I'm pretty sure we can all
Yeah.
Right.
figure that out too. So, for class and grades. For class and grade, let's hammer this out right now so that we can submit this. What works for you guys?
Same
Same.
time, same place.
Yeah, pretty much free whenever.
I would say this would probably be pretty easy because we're all quarantined and we can't really do anything.
Right.
So-
We'll say, you guys, next week there is a chance that I'll be getting to go back to work with my clients. And if that's the case, I will be out of my session at 1 p.m. Arkansas time. That's 2 hours. It'll be 11 a.m. in Arizona then. So I maybe instead of 1, we could do 2 just so that I have an hour to get home and prepare because it's 20 minutes from my house.
Okay. Yeah, no, that's fine. Saturdays are usually really open for me. My wife's home, so we can take care of the little one, or I'll have a second eye on him. So whatever works for you guys, I'm pretty flexible. Yeah, that works for me. So if you at 2 p.m. Arkansas time would be
2 p.m.
2
2
p.m.
p.m. y'all's
Arizona.
time. Wait.
Arizona.
Arizona Pacific Standard,
Yes, PST.
PST.
Okay.
Okay, that works for me. That works.
Yeah.
And then
'Cause that'll put you at what, like 4 or 5 East Coast.
Wait. Okay. Wait. Yeah. That's like, there's no sense in that. So, okay. Help me out this. So 1 p.m. my time is 11, 12 a.m. y'all's time.
It'd be like 11 a.m. I think are you guys East Coast in Arkansas?
what time did you start the meeting today?
1 p.m.
3.
Pacific time.
3?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
1 p.m. Arkansas is like 11 o'clock our time.
Okay. So let's just do 1 p.m. again. That totally
Okay,
works. I'm
so
so sorry.
1 p.m. PST is 3 p.m. for Sammy. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
3 p.m. for Sammy next Saturday.
I'm
Everybody
sorry.
in PST.
So 1 p.m. PST, so I can write it in the notes.
Yes.
It's gonna be 1 over here. Okay. So
Also, just a side note for next week's note takers, I'm at 800 words.
Okay, so
Oh.
I think I'm doing next week. So just like write.
I can forward you an email just so you can see kind of what I did, because
I just want to make sure like I don't like write like I don't know, like that makes me like nervous. I don't want to like write like all the wrong things.
I'm at 536 words, and I'm thinking of condensing it down again. So
I basically took main points that everybody said,
Oh,
like
okay.
essential things, like whenever something from the book was listed,
yeah.
whenever, like main points from everybody's talking points, and like use that.
Okay, that doesn't sound too
And
bad.
then, so Becky will be the note taker for next week, and then I believe Sammy said that she was gonna lead for next week.
Yes.
Okay.
And then
Do we only need 1 leader and 1 note taker? Is that how this works, or is it 2 note takers?
it's a 1 leader and 1 note taker for every meeting, except
Okay.
for one of the meetings you have to double up because we went from 5 meetings down to 4.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
we made this meeting the doubled up meeting with 2 leaders and 2 note takers, just so that we can get that
Yeah.
outlier out of the way.
I love it.
Yeah, but from now on, all the meetings will have 1 leader, 1 note taker. And
Okay.
then Charles, you'll be turning in the recording for this week's meeting.
Yes, I will.
Who
Now,
wants-
does that recording need to be? It doesn't need to be cut and paste with the note takers. Do they need that link to finish up their side of the deal? I'm not really seeing
So
it.
we all turn it in separately.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I
Okay.
think
So as long as when you submit it, you have all of our names on it. Like my first thing is a list of all of our names. So
Okay. And then I'm just trying to scrolling through this to make sure I'm understanding this correctly. So the 5 points that we went through for the thing, that's for the note takers, and then I just turn in what we're doing right here. And then I think we have established our note taker, our leader for next week, time. We've established that, and then for next week we will need to discuss leader in the next meeting. Who will serve a note taker? Who will be responsible for sending in the meeting and the invite? Who wants to be responsible for that next week? Who will be responsible for sending in the meeting invite and or recording next week's virtual meeting? Do you guys want me to do that again? Since
Well, I know we have talked about that. Like, remember when you first kind of said it? Like, did you want to at least record it all since you're gonna put it up on YouTube?
I can, yeah. I mean, I don't honestly. It doesn't bother me as long as I'm carrying my weight. I don't want to make you guys feel like I'm not, just by just doing
Like
Zoom
almost
stuff.
like you're doing like too much. If you're the one doing it every time, I think we don't want you to feel like you are.
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
gosh, no, it's
Thank you,
honestly like this is one of the easiest recording platforms I've ever dealt with. Like as soon as I'm done with this thing, I'm actually recording it to my computer itself instead of the cloud, so that way I know I have it. And what it'll do is it'll create like an MP3, and all I got to do is just upload it to YouTube, and boom, it's there.
Okay, excellent. Because I did that. Everything you just said.
Like with
work, and that's when I'm like, oh no, like he's doing all this work every time, and to me that sounds like a lot. Like
Yeah.
It's not. It's honestly, it's super simple. It's there's nothing really to it. It literally will tell me, do you want to create a blank? And I'll be like, yes. And then it'll take about 20 minutes for it to do its thing. And then it'll be like, would you like to upload this to YouTube? I would actually, yes. And then it'll create a link, and then I can even put it on Canvas, and you guys, I just basically highlight the link and put it straight to Canvas, and you guys can all go look at our wonderful meeting today.
I'm excited, actually.
Yeah, so like as long as Charles is fine with having to record and submit the video every time, then like that works for me, because if anything, Charles knows Zoom better than like probably the 4 of us combined at this point.
Yep.
So I would feel secure with knowing that our recording is not going to just disappear into
yeah.
Right.
the
Well,
unknown.
Well,
Yeah.
we appreciate you doing this for us, Charles.
Thank you, Charles.
note takers.
This was awesome, you guys. I think we nailed it.
I hope we nailed it. I hope we all get a good grade out of this.
Yeah.
I think we did.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Okay,
All right, guys.
so
Well, I'm out of cheersing stuff, so I'll just put my little.
Yeah. Sammy, your end time is 2:24 p.m. PST.
Thank you. Thank you for that. All right, guys. Talk soon.
Talk
Yeah.
soon.
See you guys.
Bye.
All right, guys.
All right, bye guys.
Bye.
Bye.